Welcome to Books with Noah, a podcast where I talk with my friends about their favorite books. I'd like to welcome Tracey to Books with Noah. Tracey is a man of many interests. He's an engineering team leader, a blacksmith, and most recently, a plant-based food enthusiast. Tracey, welcome back to Books with Noah.
Hey, Noah, thanks for having me back on. It was a good time last time, and so I've been looking forward to this too.
Awesome. Today we're not talking about sci-fi. We are talking about Penn Jillette's Presto. Penn Jillette, for those who may not know, is part of Penn and Teller. They've got a show in Las Vegas now where they're famous magicians with some quite good showmanship. I watched some of his videos on Masterclass, where he talks about the craft and how people work, and so his book is called Presto. It's How I Made Over 100 Pounds Disappear and Other Magical Tales. So, first of all, a short disclaimer. This discussion talks about diet. Nothing here is medical advice. If you think you need that, go consult an actual professional. So, so Tracey, tell me about how you got involved in plant-based diet and maybe how you found out about Presto and Penn Jillette.
Sure. So, I mean, it's recent for me, obviously. Well, not obviously, but I've been a lifelong meat and cheese addict. I love a good steak, and just the standard American diet, as it's referred to in this book, or the SAD diet, has been my staple as long as I can remember. And with that, I've gained weight steadily since I was in high school. I'd say, every year, I'd have good years and bad years, but in general, it's been an upward trend. And I guess it was probably around the mid to end of 2019 that I realized that no amount of exercise or added time on the elliptical machine was having an effect on my weight and how I felt. And there's an adage that you can't outrun a bad diet. And I was kind of coming to that conclusion eventually. In years past, in my younger self, I would be able to kind of burn off extra calories and keep my weight somewhat under control. And I just was getting to a point now in my 40s that it wasn't working as well. And the amount of hours that you would have to devote to exercise, or that I would, wasn't a good value proposition. So I went looking for a diet. I've been on many diets over the years, but I knew it was time for a change. I looked at keto. I looked at a lot of the other diets that are kind of popular right now. In the past, I've done Atkins. I've done calorie restriction. I've done, I'm just going to eat lean and, get the fat-free whatever and just try to control that way. And none of those ever lasted. I have had moderate success in the past. I lost 40 pounds at a time on Atkins, and cravings were killer, and just couldn't maintain it. So I really needed something that was sustainable and that was going to work without fail. And this is one of those books that in your life, sometimes a book will come along just at the right moment. And that's what this one was for me. So that's why it's special for me, because it kind of sent me down this path of learning what kind of diet was going to work for me, and hopefully extend my useful hours as engineers to say, right? Time between failures. So I came across it on Amazon or Audible and listened to it that way. And yeah, so that's my intro. That's how I came across it and why it's important for me.
Wonderful. I'd say my experience has been quite similar. The book was, I think, inspirational and what I needed to hear when I heard it. I guess we can give some background and a little bit of a spoiler, but so Penn Jillette describes how he's in the doctor's office. He's got issues out the wazoo. He's on all of the blood pressure medication. They're telling them that he's either going to die really soon or he's going to need to have I forget what kind of gastric surgery to make him lose weight. and he just had kids, I think, and he was thinking about how he wants to be around for his children and his wife and all of that. And so he says, give me, what is it, like 3 months or something, to turn it
Some
all
period of
around.
time, I don't recall. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes and talks to Ray Cronus. Cronus.
Well, and I
Sorry. Yeah.
distinctly remember, I don't want to interrupt too much,
No,
but
go ahead.
distinctly remember the conversation with the doctor that he describes in the book. And it was something like, the doctor's like, you're going to be back in 6 months and we're going to do this surgery and we're going to save your life. And he's like, whoa, 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 that sounds extreme. Isn't there something we can do? Give me a little bit of time. And the doctor's like, yeah, okay, I'll give you 6 months and you can come back and have the surgery, because nobody ever does what they say they're going to do. Nobody ever loses the weight and gets healthy. So, all right, continue. Sorry.
And so then Penn talks to Cray Ray, who I guess we can talk about him more in a minute, but who's I think at the time he was a NASA scientist, or maybe he was retired, I don't know. But and they go on this insane diet where until Penn hits his target weight, the only thing he eats is potatoes. No salt, no sugar, no butter, nothing on top of the potatoes, just straight up boiled potatoes, and only boiled potatoes. Right. And he, doesn't tell anyone why or talk about the diet. There's no cheat days. It's just only potatoes. Right. And he loses like an astronomical amount of weight because he's I guess probably been eating 4 to 6,000 calories a day, and now he's down to like maybe 2,000, maybe. I mean, if you look up how many potatoes you have to eat to hit 2,000 calories, it's like 5 or 6 pounds. It's something ridiculous where psychologically are so tired of potatoes by the time that you won't ever eat that many. So I think his body kind of went into a bit of a starvation, self-metabolizing state, if I had to guess.
I don't think it's actually starvation. I think part of the sort of the genius of Cronus, of Cray Ray, as he's described in the book, is that he's done some of the nutrition science, and he knows that you can actually survive and maintain health by just eating potatoes. There's enough protein, there's enough carbohydrate, sugars, and all the other things that the body needs, that you can actually sustain, a healthy life. So I don't think it's starvation, but I think it's just a rapid reduction in like incoming nutrients, and the body has to adapt to that. But because starvation, I think, suggests that you're like consuming your own muscle and your brain matter, and like you're
Sure. Well, I mean, he definitely
on the way to dying.
Yeah, he's not on his way to dying, but he definitely was metabolizing, I think, his muscle and his fat equally. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, he achieves the goals that he set out to, and for him, he also says, this is not medical advice. If you're listening to a comedian for medical advice, you're an idiot or something, something funny like that, because he did come very close. He had some close encounters where he was on a medication for his blood pressure, and the blood pressure went from being really high to really low because he was so rapidly losing the weight that the drugs started affecting him differently. So even this can be dangerous, I suppose. But it's just fascinating. I'll talk for a second. I really enjoyed the audiobook for this because Penn Jillette himself reads it, and the book is, I don't know how to describe it other than a bit crass. I think he wrote the book for his past self, right? For the person he used to be, because it being the book that he needed to hear, right? Where he even at the end has a letter to himself, which I really enjoyed, saying, hey, you fat bleep, do you actually care about the people in your life? If so, you're going to make changes. And he talks about all sorts of topics that are not family appropriate, if that's a important consideration. But his showmanship and his way he reads the book and the way he tells stories is just so good.
Yeah, he's really self-effacing, and he's uses humor, and I mean, he's just a showman through and through, and it comes out in the writing. And so even if you're not looking for some new diet revolution or way of seeing food, it's still a fun read, still enjoyable. And I think I would have enjoyed it even if I hadn't been. But yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about your journey, about Cray Ray, and what
sure.
you think about.
So I'll also disclose I did not do the potato diet. I was about that close to doing it because I like the idea of extremes, and I just thought it'd be really cool to do it. And I think that's why it worked for Penn, is because he's a guy of extremes. He doesn't use alcohol or drugs and never has, which is unusual in the entertainment industry. He's a libertarian, I think, self-expressed libertarian, which is very different from mainstream thinking in a lot of ways. And so the idea that he could walk around and just order a potato and people are like, what the heck is with this guy? I thought that was amusing, and I think he enjoyed that. And so I thought about it and decided, well, I'll try a more realistic approach to what's called a whole food plant-based diet. And that's really what Ray Cronise is a proponent of. He's not really a proponent of the potato diet. That was more of not a gimmick, but it was a useful means to adapt Penn to this new way of thinking and eating, and to sort of reduce his dependence on sugar and salt and oils and a lot of things that are in the standard American diet. And so if you eat potatoes for a couple of weeks, you become very, very sensitive to salt and spice and other flavors that we take for granted right now. We're all very, very oversaturated with that if we eat the normal American diet, which I still love, by the way. And I'll also say that this way of eating, according to Ray, is it leaves room for what he calls rare and appropriate occasions. So if you go to a barbecue or you go to a friend's birthday party, eat the cake. Have the hamburger if that's what's being served, and it's about people and places and enjoying your life. But what my philosophy of it is that I'm trying to eat this way about 90 or 95% of the time. And then when I eat the other way, when I eat the way that I used to with burgers and pizza and things, then I really, really enjoy it. But I know that tomorrow I'm going to be back on, this way of eating. So I didn't do the extreme. And I guess we should describe what the whole food plant-based diet is. It's basically, you're trying to eat food in its natural state with the least amount of processing that you can. So if you're going to eat an apple, you eat an apple. You don't eat dried apple chips or applesauce with sugar and cinnamon and other things added to it, because that apple, in the form that it comes off the tree, is already a very balanced food. It has the right amount of fiber, the right amount of water, the right amount of sugars in it, for your body to metabolize. And if you start taking out things or adding things, then you're sort of throwing off the balance. And so if you try to eat most of your food that way, that allows the body to be more in balance. It's starting to sound a little bit woo-woo, which is not really the way that I want to think about it. There's really a lot of science behind it that Ray Cronise has studied and practiced and published in papers, and you can actually go find him on the web. He also published a book. He co-authored a book called The Health Span Solution, which I'll show up here.
Solution. Yeah, we'll link to it.
Which has the first maybe third of it has the diet philosophy and the scientific reasoning behind it, and then the last of it is lots of recipes, which I use a lot for my eating these days. And there's other sources for those kind of recipes. There's a large and growing community of people that eat this way. So back to what it means to be whole food plant-based: least amount of processing as possible, no added sugar, no added salt. And probably the hardest for me is no oils. So olive oil, believe it or not, is off the table.
Calorie dense.
Except for very specific culinary uses. Like you may do a stir fry, and you can actually do that in like a vegetable broth. And then at the very end, you may add a dash of, say, sesame oil, maybe a dash of salt, just for the culinary kick that you get.
That's
and
finishing.
Those things stay on the surface and they don't get cooked into the food. So instead of eating, 4 or 5 tablespoons of oil with that stir fry, you're getting maybe a half a tablespoon.
Right.
And for most recipes, I don't actually do that. And so that's what it is. Leaving out the stuff that are food additives and adjuncts and things like that. And it's really fun to eat this way. Actually, it's opened up a whole new kind of world of flavors, and I appreciate vegetables and fruit a lot more than I used to. In Presto, Penn talks about he's a big music fan, so he talks about the difference between the standard American diet and whole food plant-based being, the standard diet is like rock and roll. It's got like 4 chords, and it's hard and heavy, and it hits you right in the face, and you just rock out, and you're eating your pizza and your burgers and your cheese fries, and it's great. But the other side of it is, I don't remember if he calls it classical or he calls it a symphony, or do you recall? No, I don't remember the term.
It's something along those lines.
There's so much more nuance when you take out all the extra stuff and you enjoy food in the way that it comes off the tree or off the plant. So I don't know. Yeah. I feel like I kind of rambled. So
no, I think this is wonderful. He definitely inspired me as well, and I'm not doing anything as extreme as you guys did, but I did take it as a cue to eat as many identifiable vegetables as possible, and to really pack those in, and I think it definitely leads to me feeling better. And he kind of pushed me onto that nutrition train of taking ownership, and like not just being a passive consumer of, oh, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go to the grocery store without a plan and just buy whatever I stumble across, but show up with a shopping list, with a plan of what I'm going to cook, and to really be responsible for what I eat, because it becomes who I am. So it's and it's hilarious, and if you like crude sex jokes, it's there's a lot of them in there. So
it's pretty. Yeah. He gets pretty crude, but it's all in good fun. Another thing that I was thinking about in terms of sort of defining what the diet is, people go, "Oh, so you're vegan?" And
oh god,
it's a lot of the things that I eat could be considered vegan. The problem is that a lot of vegan food has a lot of junk in it, a lot of salt and extra sugars, and oil is a big thing.
And I think the nuts servings are usually out of proportion too, right?
Yeah, so I don't honestly know, and like you said, we're not nutritionists or anything, but I know that it's not really vegan eating, and I know that you can be a vegan and adhere strictly to the no animal products side of things and still be really, really unhealthy. Like you can eat Cheetos and like Cheez-Its probably and still be considered vegan, and it won't be good for you, and you probably won't lose weight. So just something to consider as you approach this.
Yeah.
So results, I guess. So one thing is, I don't think there's recipes in the book. Something to let people know. It's all just his journey, and it's high level, kind of what Penn went through to lose the weight and become healthy and get his blood pressure in line. If you want recipes, you're going to have to branch out and look at other sources. I noticed some of the reviews on Amazon were really like giving 1 stars because they're like, this isn't a cookbook at all. I I didn't lose any weight. So
right.
That's what I consider.
Clearly, it's funny.
Yep. So my results have been pretty astounding for me, given my past history with diets. I started about 304 pounds in February of 2020, and went on the diet. And the first 2 to 3 months, I lost about 10 pounds a month.
Wow.
And then it's almost kind of like a inverse log plot. It's kind of plateaued, and through summer and early fall, I continued to lose maybe 2 pounds a month, and then at October, November, December, which are always my worst months because you've got Halloween with the candy, and then Thanksgiving and the holidays, I usually pack on weight. Usually those are my worst months, and in this case, I pretty much stayed flat. I didn't gain any.
Wow, that's astounding.
Yeah, it is. And I still ate some goodies, and I had some had a steak here and there. And so if you see me out at a restaurant eating a steak, they'll go, "Hey, I thought you were the vegan guy." So I'm not. I still enjoy eating that way, but just maybe 5 to 10% of the time. And now we're into February now, and so January I started back on the downtrend. I'm still on the downtrend, so we'll see how far this goes. My target is kind of around 250 is where I want to be. It's where I was in high school, and if there's really no reason for me to jump off of this way of living, so we'll see how far it goes. I don't plan to stop when I hit that weight, but I might have more rare and appropriates.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and just to wrap up, I remember Penn in the book describing his cheat days are whenever somebody else is paying at a fancy restaurant. It's just kind of comical. It's like, whenever it's free, he's gonna go all
that makes
out.
it appropriate.
Yeah, so you can make your own rules, and yeah, I think he was explaining how those times out make him really appreciate taking care of himself, because he enjoys it, but he's like, dear God, I couldn't do this every day. Like,
you start to realize how maybe people say, oh, that sounds really extreme. You're not eating any oil or salt or anything. And but once you've done it for a little while, you kind of look in the rearview mirror and you go, man, I was eating extreme before. Like the amount of crap I was taking in just with every meal, it's kind of astounding. And it's because there's this industry. It's like anything that becomes industrialized. There's teams and teams of scientists and food engineers that are targeting flavor to try to.
Yeah, the folks at Doritos have, their panel with all of their human test subjects, and they go, oh, garlic dust number 4, people ate 10% more, and so
and thank goodness, because I love Doritos, but thank goodness they're there, and I'm a capitalist, and I love that that's available to me when the time is right. And this may not be for everybody. A lot of people can eat a balanced diet and moderate when I've never been good at moderation when it comes to food. So
yeah,
this works for me, and the book is it's a fun read. So.
Cool. Well, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of Books with Noah.
Sure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Books with Noah. Please visit our website, bookswithnoah.com. You can also find us on YouTube by searching Books with Noah.